It goes back to the basic idea of why are we studying a language. Hi there, Steve Coffin here. And today I want to talk about what is the most important thing in language learning. The most important thing in language learning. Remember, if you enjoy these videos, please subscribe, click on the bell for notifications. And if you follow me on a podcast service, please leave a comment. So, what's important in language learning? The answer is quite simple. What is important in language learning is whatever is important to you, the learner. All right? And I'll explain what I mean by that. You'll remember, or those of you who follow me will remember the 3 keys to language learning, which I often refer to, something that I heard at a language teachers conference in San Diego many years ago. And a very experienced person with many years of teaching told me that there are only 3 things that matter in language learning. The attitude of the learner, the time spent with the language, not reading grammar in your native language, but actually with the language, listening, reading, speaking, writing. And the third thing is the ability to notice. And that is a little more difficult to understand. But if we do research on things that we notice in life, we notice things that are important to us. And so the importance of things becomes a big factor in language acquisition. And I thought of doing this video because I noticed that I was listening to a mini story in Persian for the, 30th time. And I noticed something about verbs a particular verb in Persian that I hadn't noticed before. Why did I notice it? I didn't deliberately sort of plan to notice that, but probably in the sort of evolution of my learning of Persian, I'm now sort of open to noticing something which has now become important to me, because I noticed that I'm struggling with certain, patterns of verbs in Persian. And so then I noticed this thing in this story. It's not that I set out, I'm going to listen to this story and I'm going to deliberately notice the verbs or something like that. No, it's just that I was ready to notice this particular verb and structure. And having noticed it there, and I'll probably notice it again, I think we've all had the experience that once you notice something somewhere, you'll notice it in other places. And eventually then, hopefully, that then becomes a pattern that I will recognize and that I'll be able to use. But it begins with the idea that this now is important for me. I remember when I was learning Chinese characters, and of course, teachers like to teach you things that they think are important. So the teacher decides what's important. So they taught me that the Chinese characters have these radicals, these components that represent either meaning or, in many cases, the sound of the character. But it made no, impression on me. I couldn't really recognize them. It didn't really help me learn the characters. I still felt that I had to learn each character individually. Much, much later, I began to see the importance of these radicals or components in the Chinese characters. It's like, the teacher, again, I've mentioned this before, people who write textbooks for languages feel that they want to start with, in many languages, relatives, your uncle on your mother's side, on your father's side, your older sister, your younger sister, they all have different names. And so people want to teach this to you right up front. And I always find that this is like of no interest to me at this point. It's not important to me. There's so many other things that I need to learn about the language that this simply is not important. Textbooks like to introduce festivals to you. Again, it may be important to some beginners, not important to me. At a later stage in my learning, I will find those things very interesting and therefore important. Some textbooks like to teach you all the colors at once. It's not important to me, and therefore I can't learn them. When a particular color becomes important, I will notice it and I will learn it. I was thinking too, it's a bit like when we drive a car. If we approach an intersection, I now, as a driver with many, many years of experience, I'm looking for cars that might be coming from the right-hand side or the left-hand side. Maybe they're going to run the intersection. I'll notice, for example, if I'm going to turn right, on a red light, which I'm allowed to do, are there pedestrians crossing or attempting to cross the intersection? There are so many things that I naturally notice that are important to me. But at an early stage as a driver, when I'm struggling with my manual gear shift or other things in the car that are more important to me, I don't notice these things. Or I might notice from the car that there's a new restaurant that's just opened up in my area of town. And I'll notice a restaurant, but I won't notice, for example, a nail salon, because I'm not interested in nail salons, but I'm interested in restaurants. Restaurants are important to me. It goes back to the basic idea of why are we studying a language? If learning that language is not important to you, you won't learn. If the time you spend trying to learn that language is not an important use of time, you won't learn. The more you can seek out content of interest, content that is important to you to learn from, the better you're going to learn. If there are issues of grammar that are important to you, so important that you actually Google for them or look through a grammar book and look them up at a time when they are important to you, you're more likely to learn them. If the teacher decides, okay, class, today we're going to learn the subjunctive, and you are struggling with so many other things in the language that this explanation of the subjunctive makes no impression on you because you're not ready to receive that information. You don't have other relevant information or knowledge to make it more meaningful. It's not important to you. So there are so many ways in which what's important in language learning is what's important to us. Whether it be in terms of the language content that we learn from, or the aspects of the language that we want to learn about, or simply the fact that a natural process of having more and more pieces of the jigsaw puzzle of that language have been put on the board. And so now you are able to focus on the missing pieces. These missing pieces are now important to you. So I think the ability to notice, because we notice things that are important to us, it's in many ways a subconscious process, but at the same time, you have to be open. You're not going to notice things if you're not open. Open to new sights and sounds, open to new ways of pronouncing things, open to new ways of saying things. If you are open to these things, and the language is important to you, gradually more and more aspects of that language will become important. You will acquire them initially passively, and then eventually you'll be able to use them when speaking. So I'll leave you with a video that I did about the noticing hypothesis, which is part of the sort of linguistics world explaining how we learn. And also an old video on the importance of choosing content of interest to learn from. So, thank you for listening. Bye for now.